we hear from Mr. Vargas. Before I hand over the floor to Mr. Vargas, I'm going to pass out a kind of like a note-taking sheet for you. So if you have questions that you may want to ask during the presentation or after the presentation, you can jot down notes. Maybe some terms that you don't know or anything that you are interested in writing about, I have listed here for you. Okay, so I'll pass this out. So please let's give our guests a welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey guys, how you guys doing? Is it too early? No, it's right on time? Yeah. All right, so I'm very excited about presenting to you guys because I've never been in front of a group of kids who have an interest in accounting. I always thought people like that were boring. Obviously, you're not. Okay, I want to get that straight. But I want you to understand that running a nonprofit is virtually like running a business. A lot of the same practices in accounting goes along with running a nonprofit. Can anybody define what a nonprofit is?
Charity.
I'm sorry?
It's a charity organization.
It's a charity organization, but, okay.
They don't, like, their goal is not to make money.
Their goal is not to make money, right? Their goal is to provide services to people without earning excess money in the account. Now, it's a rewarding environment that you're going to be in because you're going to be able to help people, but at the same time, you have a fiduciary duty to ensure that you are living up to the best practices that are aligned with a nonprofit. And some of these, again, are in conjunction with running a business, right? Somebody said out there that a nonprofit that doesn't make any money is not a business or a nonprofit. What that means is that you have to continuously raise these dollars. So you're not selling a product like a shampoo, you're not selling soap. What you're selling is services to people that are underserved, right? What could be some of those services? Any of you involved or have been exposed to direct services in a nonprofit? Anybody? Okay.
I worked with a not-for-profit. They helped with refugees coming in from all around, mostly the Middle East, like Myanmar in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And they helped them like get
Where was that at, here in Chicago?
Yeah, here in Chicago, it's like the hub where they kind of get them here first and then distribute them all over the country.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Good for you. Do you have that on your resume?
Not yet.
You should put it on your resume. I'm going to be highlighting a lot on marketing yourselves because out here in workforce, that's going to be very important. How you set yourself apart from everybody is what's going to give you the lead in jobs available out there. If you come across as a regular person with a resume that looks like everybody else's, you're going to go into the pile. How do I know this stuff? Well, I got about 13 years working in social services. I went from an administrative assistant to a housing counselor, which was helping people pay their rent when they were behind because they lost their job or something like that, save homes, feed people, help them find jobs, train them to be able to be equipped to find a job, help them find housing. So I've done a lot of contracting with landlords. I've done acquisitions of property to start up programs, and a lot of that you have to be very, very careful about how you are redistributing funds because there are guidelines out there. But I'm just going to give you the basics. You're not going to learn everything in 1 hour or 1 day or 4 years for that matter, which is a bachelor's degree. And the reason for that is because the best practices are hands-on practices. You're really going to learn a lot once you're in there and you're working with those numbers and you're understanding how they relate to the nonprofit itself. Just basically, a nonprofit is guided by a board of directors, which is a group of volunteers that come together with specific talents that are going to bring into the nonprofit. One of them may be, I'm good at raising money. The other one, I'm a banker, I can look at the books. The other one is good at documentation, notarizing, memos, minutes, motions, things like that. Another one can be with human resources. Well, who hires the director, what qualifications the director needs to have, and things like that, and then many other areas. So think about the board. If your business is going to be a nonprofit, you want a board that is diverse and has everything you need to efficiently run a nonprofit or to help your executive director run a nonprofit. After the board of directors comes the executive director, and then comes your finance person, your research development person, and your programs person, which is on a management level, macro management level. From that on down, then everything is underneath. For example, the finance guy, director of finance, may have underneath him a accounts payable and receivable accountant, or a business manager. This person works with the day-to-day operations of data entry, while the director of finances gives direction, right? So I need you to put this money here, I need you to transfer this money, I need you to allocate this money towards this program over here. All of that is based on many factors. What is one thing that drives a nonprofit when it comes to money? The money that's coming in, and where is it coming in? Because if you apply for the city of Chicago for a grant of $500,000, they're gonna have their guidelines. This is how you're gonna spend it based on what you told us. But then you're gonna go to Polk Brothers and apply to them for $20,000 for an additional, in addition to that program. You gotta meet their guidelines too. And this is not only programmatic. For example, in finance, you told the city, I'm gonna run a shelter for homeless people, I'm gonna feed them 3 times a day, and I'm gonna help them find jobs, and I'm gonna help them find housing. But then you go to Polk Brothers Foundation and you say, I have this program that's being funded by the city, and I wanna add in there healthcare. And we're gonna provide housing, we're gonna provide workforce, all of that, right? So now not only you have to report financially on how you allocated the money towards these services over here, but then you also have to report to Polk Brothers Foundation how the additional dollars went into this program right here. And that's where later on we're going to talk about cost allocations, okay? So, by having this entity right here, you already have to be mindful of human resources. Human resources is the body that hires, fires, make sure that you're doing best practices in investigating the issue within the agency, evaluations, things like that. All these people need to get paid money. Who handles all that? Your finance director, right? He gets direction from the executive director. I need you to pay this much in salary to these people. Not only I need you to pay this much in salary, but we also have to take money out for taxes, because we need to pay that to the federal government. We also want to take money out for healthcare, you know, to get your healthcare, I forgot the term, benefits, right? You also have to pay unemployment, because if anybody knows, like I have, if you're unemployed, you can't survive unless you're getting unemployment. Where does that money come from? That money comes from the institutions that have hired you, they have put money towards that. In the event that you get fired or you get let go, you have money there to help you through while you find another job. So you have to be mindful of all of that. And again, that goes down again to cost allocations. Again, just in general, what would cost allocation mean? It's a fine definition, anybody. A cost allocation, what does that sound like? Make it simple.
Money problems, like someone stealing or something?
No.
Expenses.
It deals with expenses, it deals with where you're putting the money at. Cost allocations, where you're putting the money at. For example, if I have a timesheet, and in my timesheet, I need to specify how much time I'm putting towards direct services, how much time I'm putting towards indirect services. That means that on the finance account, I need to have a cost allocation that's directly related to this and this. The amount of time that I put in there is a percentage. That percentage quantifies into money. That means that if from the city of Chicago, I said, I'm going to have a case manager, and the case manager is gonna get paid $20,000 for direct services, and the case manager is gonna get paid $5,000 for indirect services. A lot of that money cannot come out from the city of Chicago, because most of the money is gonna go towards direct services. Why do you need to capture indirect services? Because whatever is not captured by the city of Chicago needs to be captured by other funding streams or other fundraising activities. Like, for example, at the end of the year, I do a fundraiser, I raise $50,000, I need to grab those $50,000 and I need to move it over here to where my cost allocations is, and then I need to start breaking it down. this goes here to health benefits, this goes here to fundraising activities. And I keep talking about fundraising activities because a lot of our funding sources are not gonna give you money for fundraising, especially if you get federal dollars. So that means that money has to come from somewhere else. That's why you see nonprofits out there doing a lot of galas and golf outings, because that's the money to capture that does not cover by funding source. The annual budget, the first thing is the most important thing for a nonprofit. An annual budget is gonna give you a prediction of what your budget is gonna be like for the whole year. And remember that as a nonprofit, it doesn't mean that you cannot have excess money available at the end of the year, but you cannot have a large, substantial amount, because then they're gonna be calling for audits, right? If you say, this is my end of year closeout budget, and I have a $5,000 surplus, that's good. I have a $10,000 surplus, that's good. I have a $100,000 surplus, now fundraising, philanthropic worlds like Polk and the Chicago Community Church, they're gonna be like, well, you have all this money here, why do I need your money? So you have to be mindful of making sure that you expend the dollars the way you're supposed to, when you're supposed to, so that at the end of the year, you're still afloat, but you don't look like you're holding money back. And that's when the IRS steps in, right? That's how important this particular position is. When you're doing a budget, and this goes later to work on a monthly basis or every month when you meet with the board of directors, you have to report on the finances. You have to, right? So your budget is gonna be a projection. When you start doing your budget, you don't start with your revenue. You start with your expenses. In a nonprofit world, you always have to do the expenses first. The expenses are gonna be easy because you're gonna go to last year's expenses. How much did we pay last year for the light, for the phone, for the water, for this, for that, and grab those numbers and then move them here. There's your expenses. Once you got your expenses, now you start working on your revenue. So what are those funding streams that we're getting them every year, that we're not afraid to lose? Say 100,000. So I'll put 100,000, and that's probably divvied up between different foundations, contracts with the city, contracts with the government, 100,000. Then what are those foundations that we have a possibility to go at, that we have a strong relationship with? That goes underneath that. Then what is the board contribution? That goes underneath that. Then, is there any employee contribution? Like, by the way, I'm Israel. I just get so excited about talking. They tell me to shut up most of the time. So, I'm the assistant provost, right, at Roosevelt University. But anyways, prior to coming here, I was running a nonprofit. I was running a shelter for homeless men, women, and children in Pilsen Little Village. I have 40 beds for men in one program. Feed them, clothe them, case manage them, help them find jobs, put them through career training, help them find housing, and even help them with furniture. There are times that I will get on the van and go to the suburbs and pick up donations of furniture so I can have it available, so when one of my families or men move out, they have furniture and they don't have to spend money out of their pocket. I did that for 5.5 years. 40 beds for men, 55 beds for women and women with children. And I'm talking about from babies to 18-year-old females. And I'm talking about they need to get registered into school. We need to make sure that they got health care. We got to make sure that they are being seen by psychologists to see that all of this is through funding streams that are coming in, so that I can have all of these services available to have a wraparound holistic approach on the families, right? So I'm in charge of 95 lives. I'm in charge of 16 staff at the end of my tenure there, right? And all of that to how to manage all that money. So I do my projection, what's gonna happen through the year. And then next to it, on a spreadsheet, and we'll talk about it later on software, on a spreadsheet, then I start putting actuals on a monthly basis, right? So I have my budget here, and then over here I have January, February, March, April, May, June, July. It depends, because there are two types of finance methods to capture money. One is the calendar year. Your monies may be coming in from January to December. The other one is called what? What's the other one called?
Fiscal. We
Fiscal.
haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay, we'll leave school ADs.
Yeah, so fiscal means that the end of the year ends in June, and it begins in July. That means that by the end of the year, by June, your books have to be closed. An audit has to be in process, and you have to do an audit every year, an accounting audit, right? So most agencies are gonna run fiscally. Why? Because most agencies are attached to government dollars, and the government runs on a fiscal year, not on a calendar year, which you have to be knowledgeable about because a lot of foundations do run on a calendar year. So how do you put a budget together that has two funding streams? One is fiscal, one is calendar, where you are able to do the appropriate allocations and maintain that flow. It's not that easy. You really have to keep track. And we're talking about, in my agency, we keep track of the broom. Where's the broom at? That broom cost me $9. Where is my broom? It's accountable. I'm serious. That's how detailed it is, right? We tag everything. Tagging computers, tagging doors. Where's my door at? Never miss the door, but the same, right? You have to think about that. So doing an annual budget and approving it, because it's gotta get approved by the board, you use that to do your spreadsheet on a fiscal or calendar year to keep track of your monthly expenses every month. At the end of the month, and this is an issue that you're gonna run across, you have to wait for your bank accounts to come in for you to do a reconciliation. In order for you to have a balanced book to put those dollars into the spreadsheet as actuals. The problem is that some banks take all the way to the middle of the following month to send you a bank account. So you cannot do your reconciliation until then, which means that you may be behind when you're reporting to the board. You're not gonna be able to give actuals, but you're gonna be able to give, well, this is the projected actual. Once I get my bank account and I do my reconciliation, and the reconciliation is easy. I mean, I did those, I was doing reconciliation for the nonprofit card, the business card. So every time we needed to go and do a run to Home Depot, it wouldn't exceed over $500, I would give them my card, go to Home Depot and go get us mops, buckets, whatever. That receipt gets to be brought back to me. I hold all these receipts, all of these contracts that I'm having with people. At the end of the month, I get my bank account and I reconcile. I compare the receipts that I have with what I have on the bank account, and once everything is balanced, then those are actual numbers. That goes onto my spreadsheet for me to keep track of my expenses, because it's gonna be important, because next year, those are the numbers I'm going to need to make my budget next year, right? And if there is an interruption of funding coming in from somewhere, that's gonna be captured on your spreadsheet. So that next year, when you're doing your revenue piece of it, you know not to count on Massa Foundation because they declined us this year. That's $5,000. Now I gotta figure out, how am I gonna replenish that $5,000 to maintain the $1.2 million budget that I'm having at the nonprofit, right? You do your reconciliation, you move those numbers into actuals, and that builds your budget for next year. Once you do your reconciliation, you have your balance sheet, you have everything put together that you can present to the board, and that's pretty general, right? So your balance sheet really gives you what your, basically, you can have it set up in however way the board wants it. Usually I will have just a projection with the actual and then the comparison. That will be my balance sheet. And the balance sheet will tell me where am I at in expenses and revenue so far, right? You're going to find a general ledger. That term general ledger, you're going to find it a lot. The general ledger is where you're going to find all of the information you need from your accounting data entry, right? So you're going to go to your general ledger. For example, I'm a board member, I'm the treasurer, and I come to you and I tell you, hey, what happened with the $3,000 that was sent to us from St. Pius Church last month that they gathered at the mass? They sent us $3,000. What happened to it? So I will go to the general ledger and look for those dollars, right? But in the general ledger, you have to have some components to really direct you to where you're going. That's again where we come to the cost allocations, right? So the cost allocations are gonna show the entrance and the exits of the dollars, and on your accounting software, you're going to have, cost allocations that are gonna be directly connected to the money that comes from St. Pius, the money that comes from the city, the money that comes from the foundations, the money that comes from individual donors, the money that comes from fundraising events, all of that's gonna be there, and you'll be able to pull it out from your general ledger. And figure out what, in the nonprofit I was running, I had 3 cost allocations. I had a cost allocation that went towards the men's program, and then I had a cost allocation that went to the families program, and then I had a cost allocation for indirect services. And then after that, those cost allocations get broken down a little bit more, because the men's program is not just a men's program. In there you have housing, workforce, meals, nights of stay in the agency, clothing, healthcare, everything. So all of those are gonna be in there, and I'm gonna have to be able to allocate the dollars, 5 cents here, $10 here, and all of that comes up at the end with the report, right? We talked a little bit about funding streams, which drives your accounting practices, because your funding streams oftentimes are gonna tell you how you're gonna put that money back into the nonprofit, right? And you have to be very knowledgeable about how to be able to ensure that you're not double dipping. Can anybody tell me what double dipping may mean? In general terms, just what comes to your head, anything, double dipping. Go ahead.
Dipping like chips, like you dip it once and then you dip it again, then you dip it again.
I'm sorry?
When you eat chips and like you dip it once and then you put it back again.
Right, so imagine if you had 2 dips. Imagine if you had 2 dips right here. That's excellent. And I got a bag of chips right here, and I take this chip and I stick this in this cheese, and then I go to the bean, and that's double dipping right there. Gruesome. You can't do that. Go ahead.
You're taking money from 2 different places.
Exactly. You're taking money from, you're not taking money, you are saying
That you're gonna use it.
that you're using money from 2 sources onto the same thing. That's a no-no. There has to be a separation. In a bigger box, yeah, these dollars are coming in, but once they go into that box, there's little boxes in there. And you need to be able to redistribute those dollars to those little boxes for you to be able to have the best practices in accounting when it comes to knowing where these dollars are coming from. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? No? Okay. Out there, you're gonna find that small nonprofits are gonna use QuickBooks. QuickBooks, you know, it gets upgraded every year with some new tools, and a lot of nonprofits are using that. A lot of big nonprofits are using FundEasy. Although these are not the only 2 software programs for accounting out there. What does that mean? That means that the more knowledge you have about this accounting software, the more likely you will be to find a job quicker than the average person. I've seen a lot of people go apply for a job. He's used to QuickBooks, they're using FundEasy, he doesn't know FundEasy. A lot of people out there are gonna be like, I would rather have somebody that knows FundEasy as opposed to having a training. Why? It costs money, exactly. And it goes back to the same thing, those things that cost money, you have to really look into when it comes to the finances of a nonprofit. Does firing somebody cost money? Does hiring somebody cost money? Which one is the most costly? And which one is the most cost effective for the nonprofit? Huh? Firing costs the most money? No. Hiring people without the skills and training them, that costs money. Firing, you fire somebody, they might put a discrimination lawsuit, you go in front of a judge, the judge either approves it or denies it. The bottom line, you've been putting in money already into unemployment. So if they win, they'll just get that money out of there. Nothing comes out of your pocket. But if you bring somebody without the skills and you have to train them, you have to assign a person to train that person, or train them yourself, right? So I want you to think about this. If your job is 100% is to be the ED, but that's broken down into macro management of the whole place, fundraising, and some programs. That's 100% of your time, which is equals $70,000. Now you need to hire somebody. You could to hire because you need a person right on board, but now you have to train them. That means that out of this 100% here, you're gonna have to allocate 10% of this towards training this person. But you have a problem there, because you told the city or the philanthropic agency that your dollars were gonna go directly for this only. So now you're taking money, you're taking time, which equals money, to train somebody. And you gotta figure out how to account for that. More than likely, you're gonna account for that through fundraising, because they're not gonna give you money to train anybody. They expect you to hire somebody that already has the skills, right? So you becoming knowledgeable of QuickBooks and moving on up to these other softwares is gonna be very important. Note to self, all of these software companies that gather data for accounting are gonna come at you every year with a fee, and some of them are astronomical, that you gotta pay, because they maintenance it, because it's web-based, right? That's the way of the future, web-based. I'll provide you with a platform, I'll tweaker it to how you need it, but every year you gotta pay me a certain amount of money to upgrade it. So you have to put that on your budget, maintenance fees for accounting software. And a lot of them, again, are a lot of money. There's also, go ahead.
So how do you feel about using solely Excel, for the accountants that use Excel?
The problem with Excel is unless you, a lot of companies out there nowadays, Excel is not gonna do it. You need to know the software, right? Small agencies may use it, but you may come across a reporting need that an Excel sheet may not be able to give you. That's why those platforms are being designed the way that they are, because they know the changing world of accounting and what the mandates are, and you're gonna be able to just with the software, go over here, do a little command, and next thing you know, you can report on what happened to my group.
We'll have an opportunity to look at QuickBooks second quarter.
Okay, so again, if you know these softwares, you make yourself marketable, you're more than likely to have a job right away as opposed to somebody else who just have limited knowledge. Make yourself knowledgeable about this stuff right here.
The software developers are bright too, because they know that there's so many different operating systems out there, you know, so they can kind of tweak things as to where, okay, the Windows people who developed Excel, you know, we may not want to let them make this type of money, so we're not gonna make this compatible if you're using like Apple products. So they know what they're doing.
Right. Okay, and then, how many of you, what year is this? Is it senior, juniors? Seniors, okay. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? LinkedIn is a social media for professionals. That's where you go if you want to expose yourself as a person who is good at something, if you're looking for a job, if you just want to build your network. For example, you have out there the African American MBAs, National Hispanic Association of MBAs, right? These groups is good to be part of, right? You want to get involved with these groups, and the reason for that is because these groups bring networks. Network brings resources. Resources translates into job, good money, big house, nice car, right? So you want to put yourself out there so that people want to link with you. They want you to be in their network. They want to invite you to an event for MBAs so that you can get to know more people, right? So LinkedIn is going to be a very useful tool for you. Getting involved in groups that are specifically related to accounting, is very important. And if you're going into the nonprofit world, one or two of the leading websites to find employment is gonna be Indeed.com and NPO.net. And this is specifically for nonprofit, and there's like hundreds and thousands of jobs in accounting out there. Again, it's not about what you know, it's about who you are, right? So I wanna give you a little bit of advice. Right now, as you are, and once you go into college, focus on your studies, but there's another component that you need to focus on. You need to get out there and put yourself in the eyes of everybody. You do that through volunteering, you do that through internship, paid or unpaid. Take the time to put that on your resume. That's gonna be very important. If you go to my LinkedIn page, I got videos in there, I got news articles, everything. Everything that can put me out there so that I can set myself apart from everybody else that does almost the same thing. And I say almost because I'm the greatest at it. They try, but they can't. So, these two websites right here. Anything else you guys want to ask me? Anything that comes to mind? No? I know all of this is going to be a lot, but eventually the pieces are going to fit together. What I want to do now is I want to introduce you to Chris. He's assigned to this area as a admissions counselor, and I want him to talk about the business program at Brookfield University. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.